Hi there, and welcome to Tea Talks with Christine and Catherine.
Hi.
um, Hi, I'm Christine, the teen librarian at Middletown Public Library, and my partner here is Catherine, our technology reference librarian. Did I get that out right?
I'm a reference and technology librarian.
Reference and technology librarian. And today we're here to talk about the newest in the Hunger Games series, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So, if you haven't read the book, feel free to sit and enjoy. We'll let you know when spoilers will begin. If you've read the book, hopefully your opinions is similar to ours. And if you'd like, you can leave a comment below for us. So, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. It is the backstory of President Snow. It starts off when he is, I believe, about 16. He's graduating from the equivalent of high school, and they are in the 10th Hunger Games. And for the first time ever, they are having students from the academy mentor the district tributes to maybe, bring a little oomph to the Hunger Games because there's a little bit of lackluster attendance. So it kind of goes through the year that he mentors. That's our brief synopsis, and hopefully that did not give away any spoilers. So, Catherine, what did you think of the book?
So I did really like the book. I thought them showing a prequel was really interesting. And normally I'm not really into prequels, but his is a backstory that we don't really know much about.
Mm,
So I was glad to see that this was coming out. We've talked about this before, but I do agree it was a little long.
yeah,
And there was some parts that like really dragged, but there were certain parts that were still good, like with the girl he mentors and with his friendships and with his family dynamic. Because even we'll go into a little bit of a spoiler territory at the 10-minute mark.
mm,
So for everyone who doesn't want to hear spoilers later on, that's when we're going to go talk about some key spoilers. We get to see his family life and everything that we didn't see from, I guess, from when the Hunger Games were out. So that was a very interesting take.
yeah. For me, I love backstories. I love finding out what makes the characters that you either love or love to hate in a book who they are. So I was too. I was excited for this book to come out, but I have to agree, it was a little bit long. It got a little plotty at some points. I mean, this book clocks in at a little over 500 pages, so it's a little hefty here compared to any of the other Hunger Games. Now, even though these are the paperbacks, they are only about 300 pages. So big difference. I think she could have gotten to the point a little bit better, but I really did enjoy learning about Snow's family, what they went through, how he felt about the games, like his first hands-on with it, working with the tributes. Uh, and I liked seeing how some of the traditions and events and people that you meet in the Hunger Games trilogy, you see some of their family and you see some of the beginnings of different things. So for me, that part was a win. So um, yeah, other writing style, it was engaging. Action went well when it got going. Took me
Mhm.
a little bit of time to get into it, but can't say I was satisfied with the ending 100%. I would have liked something a little different, but we'll worry about that when we get to spoilers. I do see a possibility of another book further giving us information into, I'm going to see if I can get his name right, Coriolanus Snow, as he continues up the ladder to become President Snow, because at this
I
point, he's not.
see. I pronounce it Coriolanus Snow.
Correlate. Okay. I prefer his cousin's nickname, Corio, because I could say
Corio.
that. Corio.
So that's another thing that was interesting. We do see Tigress in this.
Yes.
Yes.
Tigress. And you find out, yes, they are cousins. And which was interesting because that relationship was not known in the Hunger Games trilogy. Um, I don't believe. I'd have to go back and read for sure, but I buzzed through them really quickly after I had read this book just to see if it was the same tigress. Um, It is, because I read an
Oh,
interview
okay.
with Suzanne Collins. But really, there's not any mention of the connections. So,
No, so that was a nice touch.
yes, it was a nice touch. We see some of the future game announcers.
Yes,
They're beginning
I was about to say they do mention the name Heavensby,
to be.
Heavensby Hall in this one in particular, and we know later on that becomes the game maker who helps Katniss towards the end of the series. So that
Hmm.
was a nice touch that they mentioned, and they do mention the name Katniss here and there because it is a plant,
Yes.
not the character, because obviously she wasn't born yet during this one. But
Right.
yes, I did think that was an interesting touch how she does do callbacks to the earlier book, but they're a little subtle, except when she mentions Katniss, they're subtle.
Yes. Yeah. Nice little. So if you haven't read any of the other books and say you want to start with this and then read the other trilogy, um, I don't think there's any really major plot spoilers for what's going to happen in the other three books. But you might approach it with a fresh, view than people who are reading it in the reverse. So,
Yes.
um,
And it's interesting to see in this one how he mentors. The purpose of the book is to mentor his first, I guess like what were they
tribute.
called? Tribute from District. So he gets the one from District 12. This is not a spoiler as it's in the description,
Yes.
and but yeah. So basically, you see him mentoring his first tribute in this,
Mhm.
and it's very interesting because she's a total 180 to who he is, and
Mhm.
maybe as to like a callback later as to why he doesn't like District 12.
Yeah. You do see the beginnings of some of his animosity towards District 12 in particular, tributes in general and District 12 in specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the book kind of does really explain quite a bit about that. You can definitely see the beginnings of that happening. And it's kind of interesting. You start off with this, teenager who has ambition. He wants to achieve what who doesn't? Who doesn't want to be successful and succeed? But then knowing what he will become, um, it's if you ever wondered why can somebody, seem so, I don't want to say innocent. I don't really know if he was so much innocent 100%.
No, not particularly. You saw the beginnings of him kind of being groomed into
Yes.
this leadership role. His family is very, you're going to be president one day. We all
Mhm.
know it. And you see them literally down on their, this is a little bit of like a
Yeah.
spoiler if you haven't
We're
read it, but
starting to get into spoilers a little.
we're starting to get exposed a little. So I'm not going to I'm waiting for the 10-minute mark. So when we can go into spoilers, but basically we see his very like humble beginnings and we meet his friends along the way, and I think these experiences made it very worthwhile, and we do see the beginnings of like kind of like the evil transition into the Snow that we know
Yeah.
from the books and the movies, because he was played so great by Donald Sutherland,
Yes.
and we eventually get to see how he became this way and what kind of was the spark in his family background. So I thought it was very good in that way because she touched on these like little details that were only like hinted at before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really did not get too much of a clue in the original story as to um, I don't know how somebody could be for so despicable. Yeah, I don't even know. He is one of those villains I love to hate. He's definitely one of the, as I said, he intrigued me in the original series, and you always wonder what could make somebody be this terrible of a person. Yeah, the book answered a lot of that for me.
Right. And like we touched on before, I just think his friendships are in here because the mentor, well, the person he's mentoring, her name is Lucy Gray, and like we said, she's from District 12, and we just start to see the beginnings of Snow really kind of transitioning into his future and what he's going to be, because you always know it's going to end up with him being him becoming the president basically
Mhm.
of the capital. So, and all the districts. So you start to learn how that came to be and basically the reasoning as to why. You learn about his family that we never heard about before, how the war went down
Mhm.
um, with District 13,
Yes, you learn more about that cataclysmic war that really set up the society that Katniss is in. It's only 10 years after the war, I believe, because it is the 10th Hunger Games, and I do believe they started the Hunger Games within a year of the war ending. Um, they do talk about District 13 in the book, so they're not a big secret. And actually, District 13 does play a bit of a part in Snow's story too. Um, it's not just this, district that was bombed into oblivion as far as everyone thought. They had some ties with the Snow family as well, um, which also kind of set up the predicament he was in when this book opens.
Right.
Um, which, I guess it's not too much of a spoiler. Snow's not exactly the most affluent person when this book opens. His
Well,
family,
now we can get into spoiler territory because it's 10 minutes in. So
okay,
we hope you guys enjoyed that introduction. We tried to give a little overview about what we felt about it before we went into spoilers. But if you don't want to hear spoilers, this would be the time to stop right
yes,
here. So now we're going to go into spoiler territory about the events of the book and how we felt about them. Because
yeah,
I don't know about you, I have some opinions.
yes.
And basically
So,
why we even started these tea talks was because we wanted to take our favorite books and introduce them to you guys as a little way to advertise, but also say how we felt about them, because we've loved these books since they came out.
yes,
So that is a little bit why we wanted to go into it. um, Christine, let's get started with you. What did you think about the events of the total book, his transition as a character, his friendships with Lucy Gray and Sejanus? We'll get into that, and also a few of the other tributes and mentors. And the teachers also play a big role in this book, and it's so very fascinating.
yes. Before I mention anything, well, if you are still listening before the spoilers begin, just remember you can take this book out physically at MTPL Library, as well as it's available through our ebook and audiobooks through Libby and Hoopla. So you can also borrow the book that way.
And just to add to that, before we continue into spoilers, for the guy who voices the audiobook on Hoopla is Hans from Frozen.
Yeah,
So a literal villain voices the villain.
and
It's a
King
very
George.
great touch.
For anyone who hit on Hamilton this July, he's also the voice of King George.
Ah,
Um,
I
did not know that. Yeah, so he's
didn't
good.
know that.
He's
That's so cool.
used to playing those villainous parts.
So
So,
his back.
what did I think of his transition? Well, as we mentioned, I started mentioning in the beginning. So, the Snow family was a very wealthy family before the war, and they had all of their money invested in District 13. So, when District 13 got bombed, they lost it all. So, they were a proud family. Some would say a little bit haughty. And I mean, his grandmother, the grandmam, has not accepted that they are no longer the top of society. This is, I think, one of the things why she's continuing, like, of course she'll be president. Snow always lands on top. That's their motto. Um, you find out about the roses, as we both have sitting here. They were her babies. A rose from the snow rose, if it was granted to you, was considered a prize beyond anything in the capital. They held on to that even when they were destitute and had eating lima beans, nothing but lima beans throughout the war. Um, so it, it's kind of hard for me, I mean, to see Snow as such a like penniless pauper, but it does set up his scheming because
Yeah,
he's trying to keep everybody in the dark as to how bad it is, and he's trying to
right,
find a way into university. And this is where he kind of starts using people. When he goes into this tribute, it's all to make himself look good.
right.
It's not to save Lucy Gray,
No,
not in the beginning. He wants to look good and kind of maneuver his way into a full scholarship so that he can continue on his path to fame and fortune. And then
and I
he
think And I think him starting off poor was a great way to like introduce him because we're so used to him being so affluent and everything, and seeing him being poor introduces like a little bit of humanity to him because now he has to really struggle because he has to look like he's still a very like rich affluent Snow that they're no longer. Like in the beginning they tell you about the shirt and his shoes being too tight, and it's so different from
And
how
what
we anticipate him.
and what Tigress would go to and barter just to make him look good because he was the one who was the face of the family. So they actually, the little remnants of his family that are left, we find out his parents died in the war. He's been an orphan since a young child. So he doesn't have very many close connections. You notice that in his friendships as well. He really doesn't have anyone you would consider a friend.
No,
Um,
should we talk about then Sejanus and that character? I think that's a good segue into that friendship. So
mhm.
he has a friend in this called Sejanus Plinth, and he even makes fun of the name, but he's a Snow. He's not. He's always above it all. He is indifferent towards him, and a little bit because of that indifference, people start to view that they are friends. And he establishes very early on that he doesn't like this guy. He's not really a part of the Capital Originals, but they move from District 2 to the capital because his dad got wealth and he wanted them to have a little bit more of an influence in society. So he moved them to the capital from District 2. And
And his,
needless to
I was just going to say, remember, his wealth came because of the Snow's downfall.
yes,
Was when District 13 left, munitions and guns and all those kinds of weapons production went to District 2.
right.
So while the plinths rose to wealth, the Snows dropped. So there's that resentment too.
Yes, and
Um,
basically the wealth that the Plimps have, basically Sejanus doesn't care about the wealth. He's a very good person. He's one of the very few good people that's in this book. And that's how you kind of know his downfall is imminent because there can be no good people in the capital.
no.
But basically he does not care about his wealth. He wants to be a good person, and
Mhm.
he's trying to do the best that he can in this horrible environment, and no one's listening to him because they all went through the war and went through such horrible events, and he doesn't really see it that way. He's like grateful to have his family and everything, but he doesn't view his wealth as kind of like a bonus. He more so view it as like a burden to have.
Yes, burden. That would be a really good word for it. And, he doesn't see a need to punish the districts. He tries to express that, hey, in the capital, you're not the only ones who suffered. Everybody suffered throughout this. He finds the Hunger Games revolting, despicable, and wants nothing to do with them. But of course, because his family is one of the wealthier ones, he is also a mentor. And he's put in the position of having to mentor one of his close friends from the district, who is this year's tribute. And he doesn't want to do it. He's doing his best to figure out a way around it. And his tribute, Marcus, is just full of anger and resentment towards Sejanus. It just further creates that despondent depression in Sejanus that, he doesn't know what to do to make things better. Throughout the entire book, that's all he wants to do.
Should we talk about Marcus's unfortunate downfall?
Yeah.
So basically, in the books, at one point there's an explosion where they're keeping all the tributes, and Marcus escapes. And for a while, you don't really know where he is. And eventually, they find him, take him, and basically, when the Hunger Games begins, he's basically stuck up on a cross, like his
Yeah.
rotting, like he's still alive, but he's basically close to death because the capital essentially chased him down and
Tortured him.
tortured him. And later on, we just see one of the other like tributes basically kills him out of pity because they couldn't stand to watch him anymore, basically. And I think he might have asked for it as well.
Now, some of the interesting things about the games in this book compared to the games in the future books, they are not the reality television show that you
No.
at all. The tributes, when they're brought to the Capitol, are kept at the zoo. They're not fed, they're not trained, they're not they're not even given clothes. This
Yeah,
was the first year of the interviews with
and
the mentors.
any of those high tech technology that we see in the future and all the pretty dresses and everything, that's not this. Whatever they're brought in with, they're they're done with. And even when his tribute Lucy Gray comes in, she's in this floral, like not floral, but like very like colorful circusy kind of gown, like it's rainbow colored. So she's not really like one of them. And that was an interesting twist as well, that everyone kept saying like throughout the book, oh, she seems very like she could be in the Capitol, because she's actually like just she's kind of like a I'm forgetting the word for it, but she refers to herself as Covey, but it's kind of like a gypsy thing. Like she just travels around and around, and how she got caught in the Hunger Games was they just happened to settle in District 12 when the Hunger Games began.
Yes. So when they put the districts in place and stopped people from moving about freely, her the Coveys just happened to be in District 12, and she insists throughout the book she's not District 12, she's Covey. And yeah, the arenas, that's another thing. It's just a giant stadium that they lock them in, and so it's basically almost like they do put some weapons in there, I believe.
Yeah, in
Not
the middle they just had like a bunch of weapons and that was it.
so it's basically like kind of a physical fight. There's none of um mutts like from the any of the genetically modified animals. There's, this was the first year that you got a sponsor, and your sponsor provided food. That was all.
And
um
another thing that we see is how much snow actually had to do with how the Hunger Games became. Because what's cool about seeing the Hunger Games in like its bare bones is
mhm.
eventually you get to see how much snow had to do with establishing the little drones. He actually came up with that idea. The
Yes.
drones to submit food and the betting on tributes. That was all him. So what is cool is like you seeing everyone sort of plan it out, how it goes and all that, and like the strategy kind of begins. And what's interesting in this one, you see like how we talked about before, the mentors for the first time for kids as well. And that presents another interesting dynamic because now they're sending in capital kids to go mentor district children who are basically the same age or they're even older than their tributes, because I think one was even 11 years old who
Yeah.
was in the games. And it's basically to pronounce the interesting idea that the capital doesn't care whether they're sending in their own children or your children. Everyone is vulnerable. And
Well,
they want
that
everyone to know that. What this book was so good at was saying why the Hunger Games existed. And I knew we were going to get to this, that the reason why they wanted to do it was control over everyone. Like, and they wanted to present that no one was at risk. There's some very evil characters in the background of this, when you guys get to read it more. I don't want to give it like full on spoilers, but some of the people who are behind the scenes of the Hunger Games, like as teachers, they're close to being kind of like a Mussolini and like everyone. Like they're that plotting and very intricate detail politically. But they do not care whether they die or you die. They want control over everyone.
exactly. So it's not just a keep the districts in their place, as a remembrance of the war, but it is to keep that control over everyone. There are some unfortunate incidents where some of their capital children suffer bad fates, and like these characters that Catherine mentioned that are in the background, they're kind of just like, oh well, you know, it's the breaks, kind of, and it kind of shows that everyone in the capital is like, well, you're going to protect our capital kids, right? Letting them work with these tributes, and you find out it's kind of, no, they're not.
No, they really don't care. They At one point, one of the characters in this gets bitten by a snake, and she's gone through half of the book. I
Yeah,
mean, they really
first,
don't care whether your kids die or not.
yeah, exactly. um we see with that friendship we were talking about with Sejanus, we see that is the closest to a friendship I think Snow gets to. Um, and then, uh, do we talk about the end where, well, yeah, Cornelius, Coriolanus betrays him. Basically, he puts the capital before this friendship, and that's, I think, to me, one of the defining moments in Snow's path to President Snow. His path, his downfall. Um, he betrays the one person who thought so well of him, who considered him his closest friend, who thought of him as an ally. And he betrays him, and we do have um, it becomes his downfall, I think. I don't know
I
how
think
much.
yeah, we should mention also how like he was kind of like in a very interesting foil to Coriolanus, where it's almost like this is almost what he could have become and been a good person and had a lot of money and stature, but he wasn't all that. And it's funny because when they introduced Lucy Gray and Coriolanus, and I guess since we're in spoiler territory, we can announce this is kind of where they had like the love thing come into play because him and Lucy do fall in love, and he encourages her to go through the games and all of that. And basically at the end he betrays both of them, like everything that they instilled in him. And Lucy Gray was always about like trust primarily, and
Yeah.
at the end she finds out that basically he killed Sejanus, like basically like he told the capital that he was planning on overthrowing it, and they found him and basically did away with him.
Get away with him. And Lucy finds out about this. And, when they start to fall in love, because he comes to realize the people from the capital are actually people. They're not these beasts. They're not that everyone in the capital makes them out to be by allowing the students to mentor the tributes. The students start to find out that the tributes are kids, which, this is why they only mentor this 1 year, because the capital cannot have that. The districts always have to be painted in a poor light. That's that control. They can't have people be having sympathy for the districts. But his big strategy is to point out how Lucy Gray is not like the other people in the district. She's more capital than she is district. She has a beautiful singing voice. She carries herself differently. She is humble. She's kind. And they start to fall in love. And then when she finds out, she's telling him, before love comes trust. That's what's most important to me. And when she finds out how he betrayed Sejanus, which led to his death, she couldn't trust him. And that breaks that relationship. So he sabotaged two of his closest relationships with that one move.
Yeah. And we don't exactly know what happens to Lucy either, which is almost kind of the most frustrating part of this book for me, is
Mhm.
that I even looked up on Wikipedia that she's just listed as missing, because at the end he does go and tries to kill her. Basically, like they were going to run off from the capital and go live a happy life together. And that lasts a whole 2 seconds before Coriolanus was like, I don't want to travel in hot weather. I'm a really great man. I need to be in a mansion and be all spectacular. So
Mhm.
they were originally going to run off together. And this is before he was given permission to go to university. And then
Yes.
he starts to change his mind. And then he slips up and mentions that he killed people. And she knew he had, but once she kind of figured it, like he slips up and says how many, which alludes to the fact that he admitted to killing Sejanus. So she basically runs off and then sends a poisonous snake after him.
Yeah.
And then he shoots off bullets into the air, and he's already injured, so he has to go get treatment. So he can't really see if she is alive or dead. It's presumed that maybe she somehow got out and went to District 13. We really
Mhm.
don't know, but she's never mentioned again.
Yeah.
So maybe if she does do future books, that would be a really nice thing to call back to. You and me also discussed that we don't really know him in his future, because eventually he has the granddaughter in the movies, and we don't know how that happened. Like, where's the wife? Where's the daughter?
Yeah, he decides, after the hurt and betrayal that he feels Lucy Gray put upon him, that he will not marry for love. And so he picks the person. What
I
is
don't
it?
think he picked the person. I think he just
Like
said,
a
"Oh,
person that
Olivia
he
Cardew, she
he
might
has
work."
Yeah, somebody that he can have no chance of falling in love with or having feelings for, just to marry, reproduce, and we know, like you said, he has granddaughters, so we know he does have kids, and those kids have kids. That's why I think we might get a second book out of this at the
Yes,
very
I just
end.
hope it's 200 pages. Look at
Exactly.
this monster. Like, my lord.
So much got like there was a lot of little things that happened in the end, like his first poisoning, how he starts to use poison
Right.
again. That's something else that harkens back to Lucy Gray, because he advised her
To use
in the Hunger
poison.
Games to use poison. Oh, the Katniss. So the Katniss is a plant that you could eat the roots. It's almost like a potato. And as she's leaving to leave him, she says, "I'm going to go out and find some Katniss." And
I do not love that part. I sighed.
I
It
know, it's like, ah.
I just felt like you and me talked about this, but I felt like the Suzanne Collins, I wonder if she felt forced to tie it back to the Hunger Games. And like that's another like subtle dig, like, oh, I'm gonna go out and get some Katniss, and that's the last thing Lucy Gray says to him
Yeah,
before she goes off, and he might have killed her. We don't know, but that drove me a little bit up the wall.
yeah. I did like how um, the Hanging Tree song.
Yes.
Lucy Gray wrote that. She sang it. So when Katniss is singing it, that is not a happy memory for Snow
No.
at all, especially as she's singing it as part of the rebellion. Katniss singing it as part of the rebellion. Um, so there, like I said, like we said, there are a lot of little things that this is why Snow does not like 12, does not like the name Katniss, does not like that song. There's a lot of things. Um, she was basically doomed from the start, Katniss, that is, as far as Snow was concerned. He was not going to give her a break one way or another. Um, I do like how much influence Snow had in the things that we see in the new Hunger Games. He was responsible, like you said, for the mentors happening, um, the sponsorships, the betting on the games, some of the interviews. That's something that should continue. People should get to know and like kind of root for their champion type
Right,
thing.
and all of this, Snow basically begins, and that's like you said, so interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess before we end today, because we're at the 30-minute mark now, I would like to uh, we can go a little bit over, but I wanted to discuss how eventually Snows get their wealth back, and that's so interesting too. So
Yes.
after Janus died, basically his family took in Snow. They were about to lose their apartment, and they were even putting it up for sale. And so, their family was like, "No, you helped our son. We're now going to help you." And I'm like horrified. I'm like, "Oh
It's like if you
no!"
only knew.
But they don't know that he had a hand in like basically like ending their son's life. And he even says, "If only they knew that I I stopped their son." But honestly, I think either way, like Sejanus was going to end up doomed, whether than like him being shot by a capital or, but just the fact that it was from his own friend who it could have like changed him and like sparked like a, oh, I'm gonna go change, but no, he's Snow. He has to end up evil.
And
And
then Janus's father becomes Snow's father figure. He becomes so it's not just that they took in the Snows, they became all family together. Um, this is the beginning of him being like a snake, you know, hiding out amongst these people that he took their son away from them, and they have no clue, no idea. They feel he did everything he could to protect their son, but he was just a lost cause. And you know, we're taking you in now. For to help you when you helped us. And yeah, ironic.
it's so dark. It's such a dark thing, but it worked out so well. And I do think, however, how she ended it was very perfect. Do we want to discuss Dean Highbottom?
Yes.
So, as a callback to what you said with the poison, so Dean Highbottom and Corleones's father had this feud with each other, basically. And he was never really very nice to Coriolanus. And at the end, when Coriolanus is now has a lot of money and he's on high and he's going to university now for free because of the sponsorship from Sejanus's family, he has one last meeting with Dean Highbottom, who's been self-medicating himself basically
With
because of like some
morphling.
war trauma. What'd you say?
The morphling.
Yes, the morphling. And
Yeah.
at the end, like when he's taking more morphling, he sips like poison into Dean Highbottom's drink,
Yeah.
basically killing him because of all the past unpleasantness. And that's the last scene you see him on when this book ends.
A couple of things I would like to see in the sequel, if there is one. I would like to see more about the relationship with Snow and the Plinths. Do they find out what really happened? Because that, and what kind of impact would that have? I almost get the feeling like the father wouldn't care. The
Yeah,
mother would be devastated because she's such a nurturing, warm person. Um, I almost want to see if Katniss is related to Lucy Gray somewhat somehow.
I
I
really
think
want to know that too. I think they are.
I do too.
Mhm.
And so that would be something I would I kind of get the feeling that that might be set up a little bit in there. So I would like to see if that comes out. But those would be my two big things I would like to see in a
Right.
sequel. I don't
Well,
know if you have
also
any.
as a spoiler that we didn't mention before I go into what I want to see is uh, at the end they actually do destroy all record and memory of this Hunger Games, so
Yes.
it will not be in written record because they said it was just too messy of a Hunger Game, so they deleted it from memory. Because they did not want anyone to have this on record what they did, the government. So we won't know. And they do allude in the Hunger Games, I remember, to uh, a Hunger Games where like a District 12 winner won, but they don't really know. It's just been passed on through hearsay.
Yeah, because I don't even think they really officially announced her as a winner. It was kind of like a forgotten Hunger Game.
Right, because basically they wanted everyone to forget this, and we know that you'll know the reason why if you guys read the book. We didn't want to present like 100% spoilers,
Yeah.
some mystery here, but it's a very interesting reason as to why they wanted it to be forgotten. But I
Hmm.
guess for me, what I want to see is like I just want to see like I agree with you his future with the plimps and how that goes. Like eventually, he inherits their wealth, but do they ever know? And
Right.
I do want to see his future, him getting married and his
Yes.
kids, and like something I realized that I never noticed before. When we see the movies, we actually never see his death. I want to know how he dies because
Yeah.
Katniss opts to not shoot him with the arrow at the end, and she goes after the other lady who's going to now take over the Hunger Games.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious, like, does he like pass away? Like, do they just shoot him off? Like, but we don't know. So
Yeah,
I'm
that would
curious to see
make
because
a
he's
nice epilogue at the end of one of these books. That would be.
right. So that would be a very interesting take. So
And like Tigress, why all of a sudden, like they were so close. This was one of his only other family members. She
right.
was like, they backed each other up so much. Why is she no longer connected to him? You know, in the,
Yeah, because I think it was what in Mockingjay we see her help Katniss escape through her fabric store or clothes shop or whatever it was.
I think it was a clothing shop.
Yeah,
So, what happened that she's no longer part of his family? And yeah, so there are some things I would like to see, but yes, maybe 100 pages less.
right. And also, if you're going to have a big finale, I was also very disappointed about how just the scene with him and Lucy Gray at the end just felt so short. It felt like she got too long and she's like, "Well, I have to wrap up now and I don't have time to write this scene as fleshed out as it could have." It did feel rushed.
It was rushed. It
It's funny
definitely
because
was.
for some of the book it dragged on so much, but then parts of it just felt so rushed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do like it, but that's just something I was disappointed with. But so I guess on that note, what would
And
you
that
rate
note,
it?
we are running out of time.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed our talk. We hope you'll take a chance to read the book and hope you like it as much as us. Um,
But I guess before we end, by the way, what would you rate it?
um, I will give it a 3.5. 3.5 stars.
I agree as well. I'll give it a 3.5.
I would have gone to 4 if it was shorter.
Yes. If it was like 200 pages less, because it does drag. But overall, it's very good, and I look forward to more.
Exactly. So join us next time. We'll be discussing Cursed, which is by currently a Netflix series. It's a reimagining on the King Arthur legend.
It's written by
Deals more with
Frank
the
Miller.
lake. What was that?
It's written by Frank Miller, who did Sin City and a bunch of other comics.
Yeah. And Tom Wheeler, I think, is
Yeah,
also
Tom
another.
Wheeler is the other writer and producer of the
And
show.
they're also the screenwriters for the Netflix show. So should be interesting to see how the two of them compare. So we hope you join us next time.
All right, thanks everyone for attending. And if you have any comments on what you would like us to do next time, feel free to comment below. And we look forward to seeing you guys for when we review Curse, the Netflix show and book. Well,
Yes.
technically comic series, but yes.
Yes.
All right,
Enjoy.
thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks.